I would like to welcome our guest, Professor Louise Bang.
Hello, Alicia. My name is Louise, and I am a senior associate researcher at VIA University College. And I am a practitioner, and that's important to know when I introduce myself, because I strongly believe that knowledge comes out of the hands, and then we theorize from that. And at VIA University College, I work in a team. That's also very important. So many of the things we are going to talk about today is made by team members and not so much by me, but we work together and we focus on materials, design and use of textiles. And last but not least, I have to say that all the projects we do have something to do with sustainability and textiles, otherwise we would not go into the project.
That sounds very reasonable, considering that the textile industry is pretty pollutive. That's why I would love to talk to you about sustainability in your research group, because I know that you work on the design of textiles. So could you tell us something about your journey into the sustainable textile design and why it's so important to highlight the word sustainability?
Yeah, the whole journey, do you mean, or just the VIA journey?
Maybe your own.
My own journey. Then I have to go back to when I was a student more than 30 years ago.
It sounds amazing. We have all the time in the world to talk about that.
I am trained as a weaver and a textile designer. And when I was trained, nobody talked about sustainability. I think the subject area, we were aware that it was there, but we were also told by our teachers that we didn't have to deal with it because it would take so many years before the population on the earth should deal with these aspects.
And how many years ago it was?
That was around 30 years ago.
Okay, so it took 30 years to actually...
It took 10 years.
Okay, to start dealing with the consequences.
Yeah. I strongly believe, and I also think that as a textile designer you need to deal with responsibility, sustainability, regenerativity, or whatever you would like to call it, because if you want to make cool textiles you need to do it in a proper way.
I totally agree with that. However, how do you feel about generally using the term sustainable textiles? Because we know that it's really difficult to call actually the textile industry sustainable.
But the term sustainable textiles is not going to happen. You cannot make textiles without making an impact on the environment, no matter how you are doing it. So we prefer to say that we work with sustainability and that we can work with certain aspects of it, but that we will never make a sustainable textile.
And I know that your team works on making the textile industry at least a bit more sustainable by using organic or natural dyes. Could you say to us something more about that?
Yeah, that's a very funny history, because it all started from our students. They came to workshop manager Inger Marie Ladekal and me, and they were like, we really want to work with natural dyes. Can't you teach us how to dye with plants? And we both are quite old. And we told them, no, in the 80s we were also working with natural dyes. Do you really want to go there? We don't think so. Why not use the synthetic dyes? You know what you get. What you see is what you get. But they keep coming. And then we realized that we should actually listen to the students, because they are the future. And if they want to work with natural dyes, we should figure out how to do that. So we decided to ask some of our industry partners if could this be interesting for you. And they were very interested in alternatives to synthetic dyes, and our students wanted it. So then we thought, yes, then we could adopt it into the Beyond E-Textiles project and see how can we meet industrial standards with natural dyes.
Could you tell us a bit, where do you have it from? Because I know that you don't work with plants as such.
When we decided to go into this world, we needed to do it in as responsible way as possible. And if you have to use the fields for plants to dye with, you cannot grow food. So we thought that would be a bad idea. And instead we were thinking, do we have a waste stream somewhere? And we realized that we have a very useful waste stream next door. So we went to the canteen and asked them, could you please collect all your vegetable waste? Because we would like to dye with it. So we made a collaboration with our canteen, and they collected all sorts of vegetable waste, onion skins, celery tops, avocado stone, avocado peel, you name it, we got it, and we applied it to the existing recipes for plant dyeing.
Okay, and how long did it take for you to have a final product?
You can dye in a day or two, that's not the big issue, but we needed also to test the results, because we didn't know how would they react in UV light, how would the material react in washing, what about rubbing when you wear it on your body. So, and that takes a bit longer than do the dyeing.
So you came up with the conclusion that they are long-lasting?
Actually, the washing, they perform okay in washing tests.
Okay.
That's not the big problem if we treat the material before we dye it with some mordant. The big problem is UV light, and that's not so good if you want to dye textiles for garments, that they will fade very quickly in UV light. That actually forced us to think the other way around, what was the real problem. And it was very nice working with Inger Marie on this, because one day she came running from the workshop and said, Anna-Louise, the materials are talking to me. And I was like, oh no, she's going nuts. But I, of course, had to ask, okay, what are they saying? What questions do they ask? And Inger Marie realized that why are we working so hard to fulfill industrial standards when we know that the textile and fashion paradigm has to change radical if we want to work responsible and in a sustainable way in the future to come. So we realized that we had to discuss also the aesthetics, what makes a product perfect. And then we changed the whole project a little bit. We found out that we could meet some industrial standards, we could make repetitions, we could make the same color, and then we changed focus to work and study what is it that makes a product perfect, and can we change that? Do we need to change our cultural norms for that?
Do you mean that the industry would be up for such a change, or how are you planning to actually use those natural dyes in the industrial world when we know that they don't like the changes much, right?
No, I think they like the changes if they can see a reason for them, and they really want to make changes. I mean, they are human beings like you and me, but they also have a business, and the business aspect of the industry is very strong. And it means that they don't adopt changes so fast that we could wish for. But now we will see some EU regulation in the coming years where the industry will be forced or will be asked to take responsibility for the product also when it's used. And they need to make the products in a way so that they can be used for a very long time before they are recycled. And that will be a new perspective. And they are interested in alternative dyes, because synthetic dyes is based on oil, and we need to stop using oil and gas and whatever comes up from the underground in the future. I mean, the COP28 decided that we need to outphase this source of energy, and we use it a lot for polyester and dye.
Speaking about polyester, what are the fabrics that you color? I know that polyester is pretty difficult to color with natural dyes, right?
Yeah, we cannot dye on polyester. It needs an industrial setup with where you have to dye under pressure and also use harmful chemicals, which we don't want to do. So we can dye cellulose-based textiles such as cotton and linen and viscose, hemp, and that's cellulose textiles. And then we also can dye on wool and silk, which are based on
protein fibers.
Yes, thank you, Alicia. You know your textile theory.
I know also that your research group works on replacing cotton fiber with hemp, and cotton is a nice fiber, right? So what's wrong with that?
Yes, cotton is so nice, it's soft and it's cheap for us still, but it's a problem to grow cotton because it uses 25% of the chemicals that we are using for farming in the whole world is going to the cotton production, and cotton doesn't take up 25% of the land, so it's crazy wild. and cotton uses a lot of water. Even if you grow organic cotton, it uses a lot of water. It's not the problem with chemicals, obviously, but the cotton plant needs water. The difference is that if it's ecological or organic, you have to use water that will be replaced. So it has to rain a lot or something like that. And the conventional cotton, you can empty a lake. There are several examples of that. So it's a problematic fiber. A lot of the land where we grow cotton is in the countries that needs more food. So it's also problematic in that respect. And it's very hard work to pick the cotton and work with it so that it becomes textile yarn and products.
But why hemp? What's so interesting about this
Very
plant?
interesting. And again, this is teamwork. We wanted to look into hemp because you get much more out of each acre that you grow hemp on. You don't have to water it because it can grow in areas like Denmark where it's raining all the time. So it doesn't have to be in the tropical areas. You can use the whole plant, so once you have removed the fibers, you can use the rest. If you have horses or something, it can go instead of hay. So it's very nice in all respects. You don't have to use chemicals to avoid insects or other weeds because it covers the ground so effectful so that weeds cannot grow. And then it in the CO2 aspect, it will absorb more CO2 than it that releases. Yeah,
that's really interesting. But I haven't seen much of the hemp fiber in the industry or in the stores. Like why cotton is so popular?
Yeah.
If hemp can so easily replace the fiber.
Yeah, that's a good question. The big problem about hemp is that it's very coarse and stiff. So we cannot make the fiber as thin as we want to, not yet at least. So that's another part of the project. We are working with the test part and the design part, but another university is working with making the fiber thin. And we need to make it much thinner than we can by now to be so soft so that it can actually replace cotton. Because we would like to make a soft t-shirt out of hemp. And right now you can use hemp for denim, for jeans, or for outerwear or workwear, and we already do that. But we really want to make the fiber thin so that it can replace the cotton we use for t-shirts and underwear.
And you also said something about jeans. Let's come back to that topic, because I would imagine that if you use hemp as a fiber to make jeans, you would still have to use elastin to get some elasticity and stretchability. However, I also know that your team works on removing elastin from the industry, or at least giving some other options. Could you tell us something about elastin, why it's a no material, and how you're planning or you're trying to replace it?
Yeah. First of all, using elastin in jeans is a new thing. Because, as you say, we want things to be elastic so that we experience comfort. And jeans without elastin are not flexible at all. They were not when I was a teenager. So we had to lay down to zip them. And then we were like, yeah, you can imagine. So someone found out that we could add elastin. Then everybody can fit into the jeans. And that's very nice. But the problem is that when we are going to recycle the material, we cannot remove the elastin, we cannot shred it, we cannot dissolve it in chemical recycling, and it becomes small things that are in the material, so it is not possible to spin the material in a nice and proper way. So it's a big problem. But I think actually right now there is a upcoming trend that everybody wants jeans without elastin. But then if you look into your care labels, there is elastin in everything.
Yes,
and
that's true.
Also a problem because it's profit driven. They just want to sell in the fast fashion system as much as possible, as quickly as possible, and as cheap as possible. And if you add a little elastin to a poor material, it will keep the shape for a longer time. So you can find elastin in a shirt that doesn't have to have a slim fit at all, just because they want to sell it cheaper.
What's your offer to actually replace elastin? How are you planning to do this?
Yeah, we have made a lot of experiments. Of course, you can always knit instead of weave, because then there's elasticity in the fabric naturally. But if you really want to weave something that is elastic, it's not really possible. But we can do something with the weave structure. But we can also do something when we take the fabric and turn it into products with the way we cut the fabric. But again, it's a little bit, we do something and we try to source the yarns that have a natural stretch because of the way they are spun. And we can suggest this as new ideas for how to get some stretch. But it's a little bit the same question as with the dyes. Why do we want jeans to have a slim fit? Why do we want cheap garments? Why don't we pay for the value of the material so that we can have the garments for a longer time and use them?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, but I guess that will take time,
yes,
a long time to actually change the habits of people.
But Alicia, imagine if the companies have the full responsibility for the full life cycle of the product. Maybe they are interested in doing something. And as consumers, we buy what is available. So it comes from both sides.
Let's come back to the term of recycling, because you mentioned something about that when we were talking about the Alasten. So why recycling of textiles is so challenging? Just for the record, only 1% of textiles in European Union is recycled.
Yes, that's true. First of all, recycling should be the last thing you do before disposal. And right now, there's a lot of energy going into recycling, and we should put a lot of energy into that. But it's not the solution to make the transition to the circular economy. And that is because of what you asked, what is the problems? First of all, we lose a lot of material to the threading machine and to the spinning machine when we are recycling it. We don't know the quality of the fiber when we recycle household textile waste, because there are so many blends. There's a lot of polyester blended with cotton. There's a lot of acrylic in the wool, and we cannot separate the fibers when we shred it. When we do the chemical recycling, we can separate cellulose from polyester, that's no problem. But no matter how we do it, we will have a poorer product than when it's virgin fiber. We will lose some quality. So the shredded fibers will be much shorter than when they are virgin. And that means that we have to add virgin material to the recycled fiber, otherwise we cannot spin a thread. And we need to figure out, and we're working on that in another research project, what is then the quality of the yarn we can spin. Can we really say that it's good to mix recycled fiber material with virgin material? That depends on the quality we get out of it.
And what's the material that you are working on currently in your recycling facility?
We are working with cellulose fibers.
Okay.
Because that's our spinning mill can spin with that. And also, if you take cotton and polyester, it's like more than 90% of the fibers we use. So it would make sense to look at these two fractions. And another partner in the project will look at the polyester part. It's another spinning machine, so they got a melt spinner and we got a ring spinner.
Okay, that's really interesting. And you said something about polyester and cotton and how they are both very difficult to be recycled. But if you had to choose one material that you would recycle forever, or if you would have to choose one material which is easier to recycle, what would be your choice? Yeah. Polyester or cotton?
I would to any time prefer cotton or silk or wool. And it's also because polyester is it's an okay material, but it's based on oil, and we know that the oil resources are scarce, and we know that it's very harmful for the environment to harvest the oil, if you can say it in that way. We also know that policy makers more or less agree on that we need to find some other source for energy. So I think in a future not so far away, we have to face that we are not using oil anymore. I think. But I don't know, of course, because a lot of things can happen.
But considering that they are like bio-based plastics as well, and maybe this trend will also come to the industry, do you think which material will be more sustainable in the future if we already know how to recycle it?
Yeah.
Polyester or cotton? Because I know that there is some kind of discussion which material is more sustainable. There are voices that polyester, because the life cycle assessment of polyesters looks better than cotton.
Yes.
Polyester doesn't need that much of water. Polyester doesn't require that much of complex technology when it comes to recycling.
But still, it will be of a poorer quality than when you make it directly from oil. For example, the recycled polyester we are using now comes from plastic bottles. And we know that if we take polyester from plastic bottle industry and turn it into textiles, it can not be reused as many times as if we leave it with the plastic bottle industry. So that is a waste stream that will dry out. And therefore we need to figure out what can we use the textile polyester for. How can it be recycled? But it's still quite an impactful process to do it. We get a poor result. We use a lot of chemicals. We have to make sure that our machinery and equipment are closed loop systems so that we don't pollute anything with all the chemicals. And we are not, there are so many problems about polyester and there are so many problems about cotton. So I will return to the point I made before. We need to take care of the materials when we get them. So we really need to use them for a long time and agree on how can we then do that. The other day I was looking something up and I found a very good article about this. And I learned that there has been a large-scale study on use of garments. And everybody thought that if you make your own garment, or if your mom is making it, you will use it more. But it turned out that the pieces of garment you use the most is the ones you buy in the shop.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was new to me.
Why?
I don't know, and they didn't ask, so nobody knows. If you buy second-hand garment, you will use it less times than if you buy a new garment. It doesn't mean that second-hand garments and homemade garments are not good, but if we know that the new garments are the one we uses the most, we should increase the use period with the first owner.
And we know on average how many times do we use our garments when we buy them?
It depends on country, but it's like 6-7 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's also the research that I found, that it's like maximum 8 times on the garment. And then, unfortunately, we throw it away.
Yeah. But now we have to, in the EU, we have to collect it. That's something. But if we put it in the bin as household, in the textile household waste bin, it will go directly to recycling. And it means that a big part of the garments will only have one use cycle. And that's not so good because it's virgin fiber that are being shredded into poorer fiber.
Speaking about recycling, we know that there is more and more trend on e-textiles. And maybe in the future, it will be more and more popular to have gloves that will warm you up when you're outside. And how to recycle those products?
That's a very good question, because if you add a lot of chemicals to the textiles, how do you know that you can separate it when you have to recycle it? Or can you make it so strong so that you will never have to recycle it? You can just make new products out of it. I think it's the same problem as with any other textile. But we have been discussing a little bit nanoparticles, and I know you know a lot about that. But what happens to nanoparticles if they are washed out in big amounts? I mean, I think that is one of the reasons that we have such harmful industries, is that it's step by step. So it doesn't really matter if a few persons do something, but when the whole population on the planet are doing the same, it will be harmful no matter how it's made. So it's very much about a changed mindset of how do we produce what is necessary and how do we use it in a responsible way.
So do you think we need e-textiles?
I don't know, but I know that if we could avoid some of the washing, it would probably be good for the environment. So if we can make fabrics, for example, that can be self-cleaning, and if we can somehow test them to see is it harmful or not, it might be less harmful than washing. And then it makes sense to do it. But again, 30 years ago when I was educated, smart textiles was brand new in my field, and we added a lot of electrical wires and stuff to it. And now there's a whole movement against that because we cannot remove all these wires in an easy way. And that's also we are in the same research project. What can we do without wires and charging? Can we make the textiles? I like to think of it that they are alive and they do something, and we try to figure out. But we don't know in our common project, the Nordforsk project, is it sustainable? But we can figure it out by testing. Imagine if we could invent something that would be less harmful. That would be great.
Yeah, that's true. That would be excellent. However, I am more team not buying at all. So if we don't have to buy new stuff.
Yeah. But for example, a small part of the project we're doing together with the Alto team is that we try to see what about the surface electricity that comes from manipulating the textile. Can we use that for something? And in my understanding, this is also smart. Even though we don't add any chemicals, we don't add wires, we are simply using the fact that there's something called static electricity. I think that's really interesting because that will be there no matter what we do.
My friend Matteo would love to ask you the question about actually the smart textiles, because now you said that smart textiles don't require electrical circuits to be called smart, right? But since this podcast is around smart textiles, and not only about normal textiles, since we both with Matteo work on smart textiles, could you please tell us what do you think what smart textiles are? There is no any term for that in the scientific literature.
Yeah.
But we created this podcast because we wanted to get the answer.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. When I look it up, there are some books on designing smart textiles, and there are many different definitions. And most of them has to do with that the textile can act in some way. It can light up, it can make sound, it can be self-cleaning, it can be whatever you think it should be. But in my perspective, I think we need to ask another question. What is it that makes textiles smart? And I think in 2024, which is the year we are in now, we might need to look at it from another perspective. And that's why we try to discuss with dye product. Could we say that textiles dyed with vegetable waste are smart? Because they provide an answer and another way to act around textiles than the conventional ones. We can do that, and we can write about it, and we can discuss it, and we have already discussed it at a couple of conferences. But it doesn't mean that the smart textile researchers agree with us, because for many researchers, smart textiles is something about electricity or special effects in some way. But we would like to raise the topic from the other side. Maybe smart is to avoid all these things. Not that we don't like them, but we need to figure out what can we take the responsibility to design. How can we be responsible designers?
And with this answer, we are going to finish. Thank you so much, Anna-Louise, for your time. It was a big pleasure to listen to your perspective on the topic. See you next time.
Yes, see you next time.